Welcome to another episode of the Family Discipleship Podcast. I'm your host, Christian Horstman, and my prayer for you is that the Lord would be pleased to bless this show and use it to provide you as a Christian parent with gospel-centered, grace-driven ideas and encouragement for shepherding your children's hearts and cultivating your family's relationships with Jesus and with each other. All right, friends, welcome back to this episode of the Family Discipleship Podcast. I'm happy to welcome back Amanda Schenkenberger to the show today. Amanda, welcome.
Hi, thanks, Christian, for having me back.
Yes. We had you on several months ago. So if our listeners haven't listened to that conversation, you should be able to find it in the archives on the website or on YouTube. So feel free to go and listen to that if you haven't already. But I love talking to Amanda. I love her passion, her heart for homeschooling, helping homeschool moms. Just, make sense of the homeschooling world, because sometimes it's a roller coaster ride, and sometimes we need help. And so I love how Amanda's, that's really her passionate heart, is to help parents who are struggling, trying to figure out the whole mess, and figuring out what to do next. So today we're going to talk about like creating consistency. It's August when we're recording this, and we'll be publishing this in a week or two. And so it's almost time to start the homeschool year again. And we want to talk about like consistency, like, how do you set a pattern, set a rhythm, and, kind of get going strong on that new homeschool year? Because, it's so exciting, like when we're starting out for the year and, everything's new and fresh and, back to school and all that. But give it a couple months going into it, and, things aren't as rosy anymore. So I want to kind of talk, how can we kind of keep that vision going and have that consistency going throughout the entire school year? And so that's what we're going to talk about. So maybe first start out and tell us like a little bit, like, why is this so important? Why is it essential to have like, consistent routines and schedules? Why is that an important thing to have?
Yeah, having these like the consistency in homeschooling is really important. Number one, when we have consistency, our kids feel safe. They, especially our younger ones,
Right.
when I realized that little kids who don't understand time yet, tell time by routines, like they don't know it like it's lunch, like lunch is over because it's 1 o'clock. They know because the food is gone, like, and you're like, okay, it's time to clean up. And when we don't have that kind of consistency, we can create a lot of pushback and resistance in them because they don't know what to expect. Like if I took away all your clocks in your house, you might be a little disoriented.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it's really important for our younger children to be able to tell time, per se, by the consistency and routines in their day. And as our kids get older, we're teaching them time management habits that can either be positive time management habits or negative ones. And so they'll
Right.
learn from what we model. And so it's just so important to help set our kids up for success, even when they do tell time.
Right. Exactly. So what are some of those key areas where like it's a good thing to have a consistent routine? Like there's any areas of the day more than others, do you think?
Yeah, no, and actually it may feel a little backwards, but when you started our conversation, you mentioned the word vision, like have keeping up that vision for
Right.
homeschooling.
Right.
And if you're a homeschool mom, you might not like actually know the like what vision is. And it's basically like I like to think of it as like the treasure chest at the end of like a treasure map, and it's everything you want to create for your family, and that's where you're headed. Now there's a lot of different ways to get to that treasure, and your treasure probably looks different than my treasure. Will vary a little bit, but how we keep up the consistency and those key parts of creating consistency actually start with a clear vision. And you've got to get really clear on what that treasure chest looks like to you. So then you can plot a course, the little dots on the map of how to get there. And sometimes we'll have to, go back on our path and change some things, and that's okay. But we don't lose sight of that treasure chest.
Right.
So I think the first key is really figuring out what that treasure, that vision looks like for your family.
Right. So you got to
And
kind of think ahead
then
a little.
Yeah, yeah. And then if you want to start with a homeschooling routine, you can. However, something that might be even better for you to start with is your morning routine because it sets the tone for the day. And when I say a routine, because we can throw around schedule and routine or flow or rhythm, and we're not really sure what we're talking about. I'm saying it's a structured sequence of events that repeats almost daily. Most of us don't homeschool, 7 days a week, but something that is, 4 or 5 days a week. And so the best place to start is probably the morning routine because it will set the tone for the day. So when you think, okay, what are the things that we want to have in our morning routine? That's generally make the bed, brush the teeth, eat the breakfast, brush the hair, those sort of things. And you want to get those well established and have your kids practice them. And based on their age and stage, there'll be a lot of direction from you.
Right.
Or there might be just the initial couple reminders or empowering them with a list that they can then manage their own time and get through. Because when we can get that morning routine down, then we can set up for homeschool well afterwards. And we made sure we checked all of the things off the box, right? Nobody's sitting down with stanky breath. And I'm like, dude, go brush your teeth and put on deodorant. I don't want to smell you. So I have boys. I have 4 boys.
Right.
It gets a
Right.
little stinky over here. So you want to set up that morning routine, and I'll give you a hint. If that's tough for you to do, you actually need to start with your evening routine. So you
There
can
you
set
go.
yourself up for the next day. Well, because if you're like, oh, I have to make breakfast, but there's all these dishes in the sink. Well, sister, you got to start working, like setting today up for success by starting the day before. So just a little hint there.
Makes sense. That makes total sense. So to start with the morning, and if you actually got to think ahead a little bit before that and start the night before too. So I love that. Prepare and plan ahead. Those are two lifesavers, right?
Seriously.
So okay, great. So switching on. So once we have our morning routine and our evening routine established, going into our homeschool schedule and daily rhythm there, how do we work that out, and how can parents and children work together to get that figured out?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I like how you mentioned working with our kids because I do think it's important that they have a certain amount of buy-in and they're excited at least about one of the things they get to do for homeschooling. Like, I'll be honest, me and math, we're not friends. We just never were. We never will be. And when
Right.
I get to heaven, I'll be like, thank you, Jesus. I don't have to math anymore. That's not today.
Yeah.
So math was never going to be exciting for me. But it's a life skill. So I do it. But there was at least something, for me, it was typically something around animals that I got to learn about that made me excited to learn. So whatever that ends up being for your kiddo, I like to, if you're like, I don't even know where to start, I like to think of broadly about the 4 core subjects. And those are math, language arts, science, and social studies. And I like to think of social studies kind of like a catch-all. It's not just history and geography. It could be psychology. It could be baking. It could be learning to drive a car. It could be like there's so many different things it could be. So if you're not sure what it is, it's probably social studies. And that can be a really good thinking about, okay, trying to create buy-in for my child into our homeschooling routine. I want them to be able to pick something that they're going to enjoy, and usually allowing them something within the social studies part of the day will help create that. Now, you might have nerds like I do, and they're like, oh, I can't wait to get my biology kit. I can't wait to do dissections. I can't wait to look under my microscope. Like, you are so weird, but you're adorable. Um, so I let them pick out their science. That's what they get excited about. So when you begin to create your routine, number one, get your child's buy-in by letting them pick something in there, if not most of it. And then secondly, thinking about those 4 core subjects and keeping it that simple, especially at least to start.
Yes, I think I've heard you talk about that before about, the way to keep homeschooling simple. So we'll have to refer our listeners to go listen to that at another time. But so um, so I think a really big important part of homeschooling and family life is like family devotions and Bible study too. So how do you build consistency around that? Do you like include that as part of your school day, or is that part of your morning routine, or how does that work for you, and how do you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question because thinking also about those four core subjects, Bible, that's history, that's
Right,
religion, that
right,
counts as social studies. So there's no need to like go find another curriculum where
right.
there's so much. I say this because so often newer homeschool moms have a lot of overlap. And I'm like, girl, that's too much. Well, what about this? I'm like, actually, that qualifies as science. Oh, it does? So and so I want to say that number one, the Bible study, devotional time, that's about character, all those things, that's social studies. So you've got a core subject already covered. Now, in our house, my husband, that's his thing. He likes to do that with the boys. So that's typically actually when I do work. So he's out there in the morning and he usually gets started, like 8, 8:30, and they'll read their Bible, they'll talk about it. He sings and plays guitar. Um, and he really he's very much a critical thinker, and so he'll ask hard questions around it. And then so their Bible time usually lasts a half an hour, sometimes 45 minutes, based on what my husband feels led to share with them that day. So that's what it looks like at our house.
Yeah, awesome. I like how you make that a part of your day. That's awesome. So we do not need to be afraid while the world is sounding the alarm about climate change. In a brand new book called Climate Change for Kids and Parents Too, authors Ken Ham and Jessica DeFord help Christian families to trust God's Word and not fear man. This full color book is designed to equip the whole family with the knowledge and tools to navigate the complex issue of climate change. It reveals the intersection of science, scripture, and logic to provide a comprehensive understanding of this issue from a biblical worldview. Christians have no need to fear. When climate change hysteria grips the media or academic spheres, it's crucial to approach the topic with discernment, and this book helps Christian families do just that. Discover the truth in this powerful exploration of climate change science from a strong biblical worldview. Visit familydiscipleshipodcast.net/climate to get a copy for your family today. So let's talk too about chores. So you talked about math a few minutes ago and how that's usually not everybody's favorite. I think chores would kind of fall in that category too, but it is a life skill. So how do you like create consistency with chores and responsibilities? Kind of having expectations for that. How do you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great question because yes, nobody likes chores, not even mom. Like, but it's got to be done.
Right.
Um, and so when we begin thinking about our routines, that structured sequence of events, right? We've got our morning routine, and then often we'll have a homeschooling routine, and then we'll have a lunchtime routine. And then after lunch, maybe right after lunch, maybe in between homeschool and lunch, wherever it fits for your life. Because some people live on a homestead. Maybe chores gets done before homeschooling because the
Right.
animals got to get fed, right?
Yep. Right.
So chores, it's also a routine. And I want you to start thinking about routines in the terms of they're like blocks you can take out and put in a different part of the day. And like, oh, I'm going to completely remove this one so we can insert maybe errands or a play date. So start thinking of them as blocks because they're going to be consistent in that structured sequence of events. Now, thinking about chores specifically, it's really important to not just have a chore list. Like, hey guys, these things got to get done. You're
Mhm.
going to be met with a lot of resistance if you're just like, hey, we need to get these things done. What really works well is to assign specific chores to specific children at specific times of the day. So if you have animals, you'll have morning chores and you'll probably have evening chores. If you have not animals, they're not animals. Oh my gosh. If you don't have animals, you might just have afternoon chores or evening chores. But it's really important to put a name to the chore. And it's important also that you think about training that child as if they were an employee. And so you as mom, as you are overseeing the chore and training the child and helping them grow in their independence and character of following through with excellence, your job is to lead that and to be consistent and to be calm when there's pushback. And so that means that we are fully present with them, teaching them how to do the chore. And what I see often, like nobody likes to do chores, that happens, obviously. But I like to tell my kids, like when they're folding laundry, I know you don't like doing laundry, but you like the result that doing laundry gives you. There's going to be a lot of things in life for you that you don't like doing, but you like the result. So
Right.
we're just getting used to that. And we're still doing this job as long as it takes you.
Right. Better to learn it early than get that rude
Exactly.
awakening later, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, right. Okay. So sometimes, life happens, right? Then, schedules get disrupted and things like that. So what advice do you have for when that happens and how do you get back on track?
Yeah, and that's a really good question because there's a lot of moms out there who feel like, well, if I don't start my day right, then like everything falls apart. I can't
Hmm.
do any of it, and our whole day is shot. I hear that from moms again and again, and I'm like, when we start thinking about our day, our routines in blocks, hey, maybe that morning routine and that homeschool routine got swiped off the board because last night the baby was up puking and we had to go, to the hospital, right? Well, when we have these repeatable routines, okay, we get back at 11. You know what? We're not going to worry about school today. That was a lot. Let's start the lunchtime routine because you've got about the same time frame that you would have started in a normal day, but you just wipe those other things clean, right? Because an emergency came up, and that's so much easier to do when you begin thinking of routines as movable building blocks. So that, okay, that part's just cleared. That doesn't mean our day is shot. Maybe instead of chores, we take a nap today because we were up all night, and that's okay. Some things like walking the dog might, that's still got to get done.
Right.
Um, but I think it's really important that we have these chunks of time, these themes to our day, so that we can really just not allow like we we don't feel like, oh, the whole day is ruined. It's completely shiftable. And you know what? If it's a really bad day, then we can have some fun and relax on the couch, do the bare minimum and move on.
Right. Exactly. Right. So you just mentioned that as like one of the things sometimes, homeschool moms struggle with. What are some of the other like mistakes or I don't want to call mistakes but struggles that sometimes we work through when we're trying to like get into this rhythm, get into this groove of consistency, and how do you fix them?
Yeah, and so a lot of moms I work with struggle with task initiation, the implementation. They're like, I could plan for days. I can make something look super beautiful, but am I going to do it?
Right.
No, I'm not. But why can't I do it? So that's where it's really interesting having just like someone to hold your hand, some accountability to say, hey, girl, you can do this. I know it's hard. It's hard for, it's hard for all of us. Homeschooling is hard. If somebody told you it was easy, I'd introduce me. I would love to know what they're doing. Um, there are things about homeschooling that are simple, but I don't really think any of it's easy because it's all just extra parenting, which doesn't come naturally to me personally. But it sometimes what our moms need is an extra like hand holding accountability. So maybe that's you pairing up with a girlfriend and say, hey, you're at your house, I'm at my house. We're starting homeschool by 9. Let's text each other. Like we're gonna have alarms go off, and I'm gonna tell you this we're starting, and you're gonna tell me you're starting, and we're gonna get started. You know, so sometimes that's how we can navigate it with some friendly support. Sometimes we might need to seek help as far as let's join a co-op because I need to tell somebody somewhere that I'm going to be there, and then they'll call me if I don't show up.
Right,
Right. And
right.
then sometimes it's working with somebody like me who helps you navigate some of these deeper pitfalls that we just can't seem to create what we want to create in homeschooling.
Mhm.
And I am at a loss of what to do.
Got it. Yeah, and we'll talk more about that in just a moment. But my last question before we do that is, what's a good place for parents to start if they've kind of struggled with this their whole life
Mhm.
or maybe their whole parenting experience? Like, where do they start?
Yeah, so with the consistency, I really a lot of times I find that people who struggle, families who are struggling with consistency, they honestly don't have many or any routines in place. And so every day they're reinventing the wheel. And I'm going to tell you that is exhausting. I am going to be tired for you. Um,
Mhm.
so when we start with creating routines, then everything begins to fall into place. And we can start seeing more of the pitfalls. So I would definitely say if you struggle, like find a morning routine and just start there. Don't even start with the homeschooling routine. Just start with a morning routine. Because you've got to start seeing, oh, what distracted me? Was it my phone? Was it the baby trying to eat a penny? Was it the dog barking? So you got to I know that I babies are so hard. I'm just like,
Oh
I'm
yeah,
just trying to keep you
I
alive.
know.
I'm just
Yeah.
trying to keep you alive.
Oh, funny, funny, great. So, okay, well, thank you for sharing that. And so, let's before we wrap up, why don't you tell us a little bit? I think you have like a kind of like a planning event or a planning workshop coming up. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about that and like what you do and how you can help maybe some of our listeners who are struggling with some of these issues.
Yes. So at the end of the month on August 28th, I am hosting a live workshop for managing multiple children. So it's all about how to have a smooth schedule while homeschooling multiple children without losing our cool. Um, because sometimes we can get upset, sometimes we can just like, I'm done, peace out. I'm gonna go look on my phone over here. Call me if there's a fire.
Right,
I mean, like I'm being real.
right.
So how do we manage our time smoothly? First of all, second of all, what is who is doing what while I'm homeschooling this child, and then how do I stay calm through all of it? So there'll be three kind of different parts we cover, and I'll also actually have the next day just like a bonus Q&A day where you can come and ask me anything live, and it's a free training, and it's really meant to help the mom who's like I'm multiplying homeschooling multiples. How do I manage this? So if you are looking at your schedule and you need some help there, this is a great workshop for you to come to.
And it's August 28th, you said, is that correct?
Yes, August 28th.
Okay,
And there'll be a
all right.
replay if you can't make it live or,
Okay.
again, somebody's screaming while you're trying to be
Right.
live.
Yeah. Or
There'll be a
yeah.
replay.
Right. Or if our listeners happen to hear this after August 28th. So
Yes.
we'll definitely have the link to that in the description with this episode. And so before we close, is there just any final word of inspiration or encouragement you'd like to share with our listeners before you go?
Yeah, yeah. If you're a homeschool mom, oh my goodness, you are doing amazing. The different things that you are doing in your brain and managing your emotions while teaching other people how to like think and learn and manage their own emotions is such a dynamic process. You are incredible, and people don't tell you enough. So I'm here to tell you, you are doing an amazing job.
Well, hopefully whoever's listening to that needed to hear that today, Amanda. So thank you for sharing that with us. So anyway, thank you again for your time. It's just about time for us to wrap. I appreciate you coming back on the show for the second time and look forward to having you back again sometime soon, Lord willing. And in the meantime, I hope this blesses our listeners and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thanks, you too.
All right. God bless. been listening to the Family Discipleship Podcast. I truly hope that you've been blessed and encouraged by the things we've covered today. And I'd love to hear your feedback, questions, or even suggestions for a particular guest or topic that you would like to see featured on a future episode. Feel free to email host@familydiscipleshippodcast.net. And don't forget to follow the show on social media and subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss new episodes as they're released. I hope you'll be able to join us again next week, but in the meantime, I pray that the Lord will continue to bless your family as you endeavor to shepherd your children's hearts and cultivate your family's relationships with Jesus and with each other.